Okay, everyone, we're going to get started now. My name is Valerie Smith, and I'll be teaching you today. Today, we're going to be looking at Google Forms. Um, and before we start, just a little bit about how we're going to conduct the class. I'm going to keep you muted for most of the class. Periodically, I will pause and ask if anyone has any questions. You'll notice there's a little button on your screen that says you can raise your hand. At that point in time, if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll unmute you so you can ask your question, and then I'll see if I can answer it. Okay, so let's get started with Google Forms. So Google Forms is a way you can create online forms that you can share with all sorts of people in different ways. So if you want to, so let's just start here. This is a form I created to manage signups for a book club. It's very simple here. It just only has 3 questions: email, name, and phone number. And I'm going to fill this out now just to show you how it works. So you'd send this people for send the sorry, excuse me. You send the form to people, they can fill it out. This has got a little bit of a verification here to make sure I'm not a robot. Okay, and then they'll get like a little response here. And then on your side, where you have the form, so this is Google Forms, it's forms.google.com, and this is my side of the form as the creator. So here I have where I could make edits to the questions, but I also have here my responses. So I've had like 2 people respond to the form, and it gives me the information here: emails, their names, their phone numbers. You can also look here at each individual sign up. So there's a couple different ways you can then look at the data. We're not really going to be talking about the data this class. That will be next week. This week, we're going to focus mostly on how you create the forms. But before we did that, I just wanted to give you a look at how this works behind the scenes. Okay, so I'm done with that. I'm going to go back to Google Forms. And what we're going to do in this class is we're going to create 2 different forms. One of them is a registration form that's going to connect names, addresses, that sort of thing. The other one will be a survey form that's going to be designed to be answered anonymously. So we're going to start with our registration form, and then we're going to be and once we finish that one, we're going to move on and do our survey form. So in both cases, you do have access to a lot of templates within Google Forms. I, though, prefer to work from scratch. So I'm just going to go and start a new blank form. Okay. So here we have our form screen. Right now we have its untitled form. This is where you would put the name of your form and description. And then you have the questions, and there are different kinds of questions you can add. And I'll be showing you how you change the type of question as we go on. First thing we're going to do is put in our title. So our title is Summer Day Trail Run Registration. And I'm going to put in a little description. Please fill out this form to register. Okay, very simple. You click and you type. That's all you really need to do. But let's say we want to add something on this form to make it look a little bit nicer. Like we want a picture at the top like we saw on the other ones. You do that over here at this little paint palette. This is where you would customize the theme of your form. So I'm going to click there. And we're going to start with our image up at the top. So I'm going to click here where it says choose image. And Google does provide you with a lot of images you can choose from. And they have them like broken out in different groups. So you could flip through and scroll through till you find one you like, or you can use your own. So I'm going to use one of my own. It is now currently stored on my Google Photos account. And it's this one here, the Summer Day Trail Run logo. And I'm just going to click here on Insert to put it into our form. Now, the size of your header image is very limited. It has to be a specific size. And right now, Google has given me the option to choose what part of the picture, because this is way too big for that, to go onto that image. So I'm just going to move this up until I get a framing I like on it. And then I'm going to click done here. And it's now put this header up here. It is also created based on the picture, a theme color. So they've picked a couple of different options we could have for colors in our form based on the picture itself. You don't have to use these. You can pick any other color you want, but I'm just going to see which one do I like here. That lighter brown. I'm going to pick that as a theme color. You also can pick a background color. Again, these are based on colors Google's figured out from those images. I'm going to use a darker one right there. And lastly, you have the font style option. Right now it's at the basic. There are some other ones. You have decorative, formal, playful. So depending on the kind of event you're or whatever you're using a survey for, you can pick different fonts. I'm going to stick with the basic for this one. So we're going to leave it at that. And now our theme is all set. I'm just going to close this. And we can move on to putting in questions on our form. But before we do that, does anyone have any questions? Okay. Oops. Okay, so no questions. Yes, Maria, what's your question?
How does this form, I mean, this is the view option for the form, right? Is there like a way to judge like how big is this form going to come out as?
There's a preview. So if you click on this little icon here, this little preview,
Okay.
that's going to show you what it'll look like to someone who's taking the survey.
Oh, so this is just digital. It's not going to be like something that you can print?
No. You could print it out like you can print out anything, but no, it's mostly used for digital work.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Close this here. Okay. All right. Okay. So we've gotten the first part of our form done. We're now going to start putting our questions in, and we're going to be using remote. Excuse me. And for most of our questions, we're going to be using, so if we click here for our questions, you'll notice there's a drop down here that gives you different types of questions you can choose. So short answer, paragraph, multiple choice, checkboxes, etc. On this particular form, we're mostly going to be using the short answer because we're asking for things like names and addresses and phone numbers. So we're going to be mostly using the short answer, but we will use a checkbox a little later on. But this is going to be mostly short answer. So we're going to start here with a short answer. Very simple. We just put in the question. We want the last name. And then there's space here for them to put in their answer. You also have the option down here to make this a required question. So if they've tried to submit the form without filling out this field, it'll come up a little box and say you can't do that, you need to answer this question. And last name is pretty important, so we're going to make that required. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So now we got our first question. Let's go down to our next one. Very simple, first name. Again, that's going to be a short answer. Notice it actually switched on its own. It didn't wait for me to do it. It's sort of, this can be actually a pretty smart piece of software in that it'll anticipate certain responses as you're putting it in. Again, we're going to make that required. Do street address. This is also required. Next one's apartment. This one will not be required because obviously not everyone you're sending this to would have an apartment. City. Date. And we're going to leave this as a short answer, but we're going to put in something called a data validation. And response validation. And what this is it limits, it can impose certain requirements on the answer. So for example, if you have an email field, you can say it needs to be an email address. What we're going to do here is we want our state to be the abbreviation. So we're going to put a response validation in, and we're going to say we want to make sure that the length of the answer is no more than 2 characters. And we're going to say, this is where we put, like, if someone puts in the wrong answer, you have here, what do you want the form to say to them to fix it? And we're going to say, please use abbreviation. Okay. Okay, and we're going to go down to the next. So city, state, country was, I'm sorry, zip code first. Got that one. So postal code. Just gonna make that required. And now we're going to do country. But instead of doing a short answer, we're going to do a drop down, because we're going to only give them 2 options here: USA and Canada. Okay. Required. So what this means is when they answer the survey, they're going to see a little drop down, and they can then say, they can pick one of these 2 options. Yes, Maria, what's your question?
Is there like a data source that you can also use?
So I think you can, but I couldn't make it work for this. I don't know that it's powerful enough to quite do that.
Yeah.
I believe it's there as an option, but I was playing around trying to do it with the state, and it was just too complicated, and ended up deciding to, not try to do that.
Okay.
So, yeah. Okay. So, okay, next field is phone number. And again, we're going to see, I don't know if we can do this, but let me see. I don't. Oh, this is not, no, it doesn't have the data validation for phone. So we're just gonna leave that as short answer. Okay, so the next thing we were going to be putting on this would be the email address, but there's a bit of a thing here. So there's 2 ways that you can do email addresses in Google Forms. So you can do this where you just have a field like we've been doing, where it just says email address and they fill it in. Or you can have it so that they are able to go back to the form and change their answers if you need them to, if they want to. And for example, here we're doing a registration, perhaps between this time and the event, their phone number changes or some other information changes, and they want to go in and make a change. If you want to give them that ability, and also for them to get a copy of their responses, you need to go up here to the settings and say here, collect emails. I'm not going to take, and I'm going to also, while I'm here, I'm also going to turn this off so that it's not restricted to users. That's not, normally with your Google Forms, you're not going to see it. That's just something that has to be with the version of Google Forms I'm using here. And you can also, here's where you could give them the ability to see after they submit the form that they can change it after the fact. And if you really wanted to, you could have them so that you could even set it so that people responding to this can see the responses to the form. We're not going to let them do that, but we are going to let them so that we're going to collect their emails and that they can edit it after they submit. Okay, so why isn't the field there? Hold on. Now this should add an email address field, but am I just not seeing it? Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to click the submit button. So collect emails. Okay. Edit after submit. And then you have to make sure you click save up here, and that will add the field. Okay, always remember to click save. Okay, so what this has done is it's put this field right up here at the top of the screen. That's where it's going to collect the emails. And if you want to have that email collection ability where they can go back in and edit the form, edit their responses, it has to be the first question on the form. That's just how it works. Okay, so we got email, stress, phone number. One more field we're going to be adding, and that is the, oops, where did it go? Oh, it's still up here, sorry. I'm actually just going to drag this down to the bottom. So notice here, if you want to reorder your questions, you can just drag them around the form to wherever you want them. We're now going to create a checkboxes. And this is going to be T-shirt size. And it's actually giving here a suggestion. So we have all these options here. So instead of having to type in every single option for T-shirt size, we can just click add all here, and they all come down in the checkboxes. Okay, so now our form is all finished. Let's take a look and see what it looks like. I'm just going to click on the preview button up here. Okay, so here it is. So email, last name, first name, street address, apartment, city. Notice here, I'm noticing here that I forgot to make city a required field because it doesn't have a little red star there. Country, you have your drop down. And so just to see how this would work, if I was filling it out, I can tab through the fields. Okay, country drop down. And then just check off the box here and say submit. Okay. So this is just here. It's now giving us this generic message here. Your response has been recorded. And then I could go back if I wanted to go and say change my T-shirt size. I could do that. And let's see here. Okay. So one thing I did notice when I was doing that is that we had that very generic response message. And I think I want to make that a little bit more customized. So if I go here to settings and I go, where is that? Yeah, presentation here. I can then change my confirmation message. So it now says, thank you for registering for the event. And say save here. Now when I responded, they will get a different message. Okay, oops, and I forgot to title my form. So I'm just gonna do that right there. Okay, so now you've created this survey, this form. Now we're gonna go into how you would get this out to people. And there's a couple of different ways you can get this out to people. For this particular form, we're going to be using a URL. So what this means is that anyone who has a URL can sign up for this form and have access to this form. And it's a little strange, but we are going to click up here on the send button. And we have some options here that we can send it via email, via a link, or we can even embed it within a website. And if you have to embed something in a website, you know what this is. We're not going to spend much time on that. What we are going to do is use the URL option. And this is the link to this particular form. I'm going to try to shorten it. It wasn't letting me do this earlier, but now it does seem to be. And that means this is just so it's shorter and it's more manageable. We can click here to copy it to the clipboard. And then you could email it, paste it in a website, put it up in a social media post, any different way you want to get this to people. And when they click on it, It'll take them to the form and they can sign it out and they can fill it out. Okay? So does anyone have any questions on that? Yes, Maria, what's your question?
In the past, you've always tried to compare these features of Google with other applications. Does Microsoft have a similar forms feature?
I do not think they do.
I mean, honestly, this is the first time I've seen this, and I'm glad I attended your class. It's really a nice feature. So I was wondering if there was an equivalent application that you currently know and use to use a kind of like this survey type or forms type.
I don't think Microsoft has something quite like this. And the reason would be is that all of Google's stuff is cloud-based, which means, you know, it's always online. Whereas Microsoft, it sort of depends. So I won't say 100% you can't do this because you might be with the cloud-based Office. There might be an application that can do something like this, but I am not aware of one as of now that really can.
So now with this form, I'm not sure whether it's part of this class. You've shown us how to create it, but saving it as a file, and I guess how to collect the data or the responses from the applicants. How
Okay.
is that saved?
Again, this is all cloud-based and it's all done automatically. You really don't have to do anything. It just does it for you. What you will see, so right now we're looking at the form as a person filling it out would look at it. If I close that, I'm gonna go back to our behind the scenes view where we're working. So you'll notice here, there's questions, and then over here, there's a tab for responses.
Okay.
So if I click on the tab for responses, this shows you the responses you've gotten to the form. So we only have one so far, including having a little,
Right. But
silly
as far
pie chart
as
there.
but as far as a template is concerned, your forms was created like a template, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I know you said it's saved in the cloud, but how do I access it afterwards? Like, for example, the day has passed. I want to go back and edit it once more. How do I access this form that you just created?
You would just go to your Google account. So you have to have a Google account. You have to be signed into the account. And then it just lives on your account in the cloud.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm picturing what you're saying.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So this particular form we're working with here, it's one where we wanted to have we're collecting information from people. We wanted to give them the ability to, change it, and see what they've entered in. We're now going to move on to a different kind of form. We're going to be doing a form now that's designed for anonymous survey. So we're talking about, we had this event and now we want to get some feedback from the people who attended it about what the event was like, but we don't want them to feel they have their names associated with that feedback. So we're going to start a new form to do that. So I'm going back here to the main form screen. I'm going to click here on the blank to start a new form. And we're going to start here. So one of the things we're going to be doing here is we're going to be creating a form with sections. So because it's going to be a fair number of questions in this, we don't want to overwhelm the people by seeing this scrolling. So we're going to be divide our form into questions and into sections so that each one covering part of the questions we want to know. Okay. So we're going to get started again, much like we did on the old one. We're going to be doing a header. So I'm just going to go into customize theme here and pick an image. I'm not going to use the same one we used before. I'm going to use, let's see. feel like something's being cut off here. All right, actually, let's see. All right, I'm going to use this image here for our header. Okay. Let's go with the green, and I'm going to go with slightly darker background color. And then I'm going to title our form and put a little description here. How we did. Okay. So our first question, we're going to do what's called a multiple choice grid question. And that's going to be like you can do poor, that's so people can rate things like poor, fair, satisfactory, etc. So we're going to be doing a multiple choice grid option for this question. So we're going to start here with the title. It's going to say before the event. I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to leave that there. And I'm going to say here, row 1, the online registration. Row 2 is going to be the organizers' communication. And then we're going to add one more row. So read the registration materials. And then we're going to put in our columns how we want this to be. So it's going to be poor, fair, satisfactory, which I can't spell, very good, and excellent. Okay, so the way this question is going to look, let's take a look at the preview to get a look at it. So this is what they're going to see here so that they can put in a response in each section, in each rate each element different in each, with ranges from pure to excellent. And I misspelled excellent. So I'm going to go back and fix that. Okay. Okay, so that is our first question. Our next question, we're going to do check boxes. How did you hear about us? Check all that apply. Actually, I love how this switches automatically when you're typing stuff in. So Facebook, alumni, scene. And yeah. And then we have, for our last one, we have the other option, and that will allow them to check that box and fill in their own answer to that. And finally, our last question for this section of the form is let us know anything else you think about application. And we're going to give room here for a paragraph answer. So that's going to be for a long answer. And with that, our first section of our form is done. And we're going to move on to the next section by clicking down here to the add section option. And now we're in section 2, our form. And we're going to say here, race day. This is so, please tell us how we did. And the first question we're going to be putting in is going to have that same ratings here, poor, fair, satisfactory, etc. So instead of having to type that again, I am going to duplicate this question and then drag it down to section 2 and then make our changes here. So please following. And this way we're only going to have to change the text of our questions. Trail signage, actions. And finally, station. Okay, so we have our multiple choice grid head here. And we're going to add another answer for this is we're going to add another question to this section, which is simply, how can we improve race experience? And again, that's going to be a paragraph. And we're actually done with this section. So I'm going to again put in another section here and we'll take a quick, anyone have any questions on this? Okay. So now we're in section 3, which is going to be tell us about the trail. And just like, let us know what you think about the trail. And we're going to be using a scale kind of question here where people can rate it from 1 to 5. So that is going to be, for our first question, is the overall difficulty. I cannot spell today. And it's going to be here, it's going to be a linear scale question. And it starts at 1 and goes to 5. You could set it 1 to 10 or whatever you want. I'm going to pick label 1 is too easy. And for 5, that's going to be too hard. Okay. Our next question is going to be very simple. So we're going to be very similar, same thing. So we're going to duplicate that question and just change this to, please tell us about the length of the trail. So I'm going to start here. In this case, it's going to be too short or too long. And finally, one more question we have for this section. Wait, actually, no, there's 2 more. Again, this is going to be a linear scale, 1 to 5, too short, high. And finally, we're going to put in one last question. Is there anything else you'd tell us about trail? And again, that's going to be a paragraph. So now this section is done. Moving on to the last section, which is going to be tell us about. And this is going to be I'm doing here some very standard demographic type questions. So we're going to want to know the age of the people responding to this. And we're going to actually make this multiple choice. So we're going to do 20 to 35. I'm going to say over 66 for our last one. So we have the age. I'm doing yes, no here. And again, that's going to be a multiple choice type question. So it's going to be yes and no. We're not going to put in a maybe as an option there. And finally, last question for the survey is going to be gender. And it's actually, again, here, giving us our options. We can just go with add all. And that gets everything in place there. Okay. So let's take a look at how this survey looks when we fill it out. So I'm going to go over to the preview. And we're going to go here. So this is what they see. Here's the first page. I'm just going to check off a few answers. Friend or family. Let's do the other just to show how that works. Other. I'm not going to fill in any. I'll just put a little nonsense text in there. So that's first section, second section. And a little text. Next. Next. And then lastly, last part, click submit. And the response has been recorded. Again, don't like that your response has been recorded response. I'm going to go into settings and just change that. Okay, just click save up there. And now when someone answers the survey, they will get the message will say that they thank them for their responses. Okay, so I filled out that one survey. So before I go and take a look at the responses, does anyone have any questions? Okay, so let's take a look at how those responses look. So you see here, we're getting a little chart here. It's giving us a lot of different things here. Lots of little graphs here. Like, this is kind of hard. This is part of the reason I'm not doing too much on the responses to here. I just want you to take a look at it, is that we really do need more responses for this to really understand what's going on here on the responses side. So I will have, next week, we're going to look more in depth at responses and what you can do with them. But today, this is just to give you a brief look at how this looks like. Okay. So this particular survey, it's something we created after an event to get feedback from people who attended to the event. So we don't want to just put this out on the internet where anyone can answer it. We want to send this to specific people. So what we're going to say here is I'm going to click on the send button. And what we're going to do here is we're going to email it. You can also, if you want to, put it on Facebook or Twitter here. We're not going to do either of those things, but we're going to say you can email it. And let's see. So you could have whoever you're sending it to, let's say, have a list of names ready. I would suggest if you're doing this for like where you're getting information from after an event, you'll probably have them all set. You can just put all those email addresses in there, or you could set up a mailing list within your Google account that you can send out to the mailing list. And then you would click send, and that person would then get an email saying, I'd like you to fill out this survey. Please go here. And matter of fact, I think I have her email open, or I could get to it quickly here. So I'm going to show you what that looks like from that perspective. Oh, yep, there it is. So here is what the person we're sending it to has gotten. So they're getting this message from here. I've invited you to fill out a form, and I just click on fill out form, and then she can add in her answers to this form. Okay, so now we should have 2 responses to our form. And now you can see a little bit of difference on some of these charts and things we have here. But again, like I said, we're going to go into how to look at the data a little bit next week. Okay, so that was about it for the class. Does anyone have any questions on creating a form? No questions? All right then. So I hope to see you next week, and thanks for coming.